It was the first week of December, and the air was laced with that crisp, hopeful bite of winter that always seemed to tug a little at my heart. Even after all these years, the holidays brought out a soft warmth in me, a feeling carved deep from memories long gone. My name's Harold. I'm 68 years old, retired for just under a decade, and a widower since 2011. My son, Derek, is all I've got left of what used to be a bustling family of 3. And for the past 12 Christmases, I'd made it my silent mission to be there for him, even when he forgot to be there for me. Every year, like clockwork, I'd buy the gifts, wrap them myself with clumsy hands, and pack my little overnight bag to visit Derek and his wife, Leanne, in their suburban home. A home I helped them buy, well, more than helped. I've been paying the mortgage since Derek got laid off 8 years ago and never quite found his footing again. I never once complained, never once asked him to pay me back. That house, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a wide porch, and a swing I installed for their daughter, Ella, felt like a promise that no matter what, I would be there. This year, I bought Ella a little dollhouse that I spent a week assembling and painting. I even got Leanne a wine subscription and Derek a new toolkit, not because he asked, but because I remembered how much he loved building things as a boy. But something felt off. December 10th came, and there was still no call, no email, no text. Usually, by now, Leanne would have sent a cheery message with a few Christmas emojis, asking what kind of pie I wanted her to bake for dinner. I tried to shake it off. Maybe they were busy. Maybe Ella had a recital. But deep down, I knew the silence was different this year. I waited until December 14th before I picked up the phone. The call rang once, twice, then Derek answered, his voice slightly rushed, maybe even annoyed. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Everything okay?" I smiled through the tightness in my chest. "Hey, buddy. Just wondering what time you wanted me over for Christmas this year. Should I bring the same stuffing recipe as last year?" There was a pause on the line. Long enough to make the pit in my stomach twist into a knot. Then he sighed, like I'd asked for something I didn't deserve. Dad, we actually weren't expecting you this year." I blinked, frozen. "What do you mean?" "Well," he stammered, "Leanne's parents are flying in from California, and it's going to be a bit crowded. We figured maybe this year, you'd be more comfortable just having a quiet one at home. You know, relaxing." My throat went dry. "You figured I'd be more comfortable, alone?" "I mean, you're always saying how peaceful your place is during the holidays," he said, like he was trying to sell me on being excluded. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just said, "Okay," hung up, and stared at the blank wall across from my recliner. That wall never felt so loud before. In that moment, I didn't feel like a father. I felt like a utility. A line on a budget. A relic that outlived its usefulness. I sat there for hours, not moving, not crying, just still. I thought about all the little sacrifices I'd made. The nights I skipped dinner to make sure their mortgage cleared. The time I sold my old Mustang to help Derek pay for Ella's daycare. The vacations I never took. The health insurance I downgraded so I could keep sending them grocery money. And for what? To be told they weren't expecting me for Christmas. That I was now an inconvenience. By midnight, I made up my mind. I stood up, walked over to my cluttered kitchen drawer, and pulled out the folder labeled Derek's Mortgage. I found the account information, the autopay settings, and with trembling fingers, I logged in and canceled the payment. Just like that. After 8 years of monthly deposits, I hit stop. It wasn't done out of spite. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. If I was no longer part of their lives, then neither should my money be. The next morning, I boxed up the dollhouse, the wine subscription, and the toolkit. I labeled it, "Return to Sender," and left it in the hallway like it was something I'd found that didn't belong to me. Because maybe it never did. The days that followed were strangely quiet. No calls. No messages. Not even a check-in from Derek. Maybe they hadn't noticed yet. Or maybe they were just too busy entertaining Leanne's parents to care. I started going on long walks again. Rediscovering parts of my town I hadn't seen in years. I stopped by the library, the coffee shop I used to visit with my late wife. Even joined a local community center for seniors, just to avoid the 4 walls that now felt like a prison. On Christmas Eve, I sat alone at my small kitchen table. A single plate, a microwave turkey dinner, and a cup of peppermint tea. I stared at the empty chair across from me, remembering how my wife used to hum Christmas carols while setting the table, and how Derek, as a boy, would bounce in with chocolate on his cheeks and excitement in his eyes. Those days were gone. Erased, maybe. Or just forgotten. My phone buzzed once around 9 p.m. I glanced at it. A photo from Derek. It was their Christmas tree. Leanne and Ella in matching pajamas, Derek in the background holding a glass of wine, everyone smiling. No caption. No, wish you were here. Just a perfect little snapshot of the life they chose, without me. I put the phone face down and looked out the window at the snow falling gently over the porch. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel bitter. I felt free. And I knew, deep in my gut, that this was a turning point. The moment I stopped begging to be included. The moment I chose peace over obligation. My son said he wasn't expecting me for Christmas. So I canceled the mortgage payment. But what I didn't cancel was my dignity. That part was just starting to grow back. The first mortgage notice must have hit Derek's mailbox just after New Year's. Probably mixed in with the leftover holiday flyers and a few belated Christmas cards from people who still thought they cared. I imagine him grabbing the mail with one hand, phone in the other, laughing at some video or chatting with Leanne about where to order dinner from, completely unaware of the reality waiting in that thin white envelope with red ink warnings stamped across it. The kind of envelope that gets your attention, even if you're not looking for it. I wasn't there to see his face when he opened it, but I could picture it, eyebrows knit in confusion, that slight crease forming between them, the way he'd scratch his jaw like he did when something didn't make sense. Missed payment, he'd say aloud. There must be a mistake. Dad pays this automatically. But it wasn't a mistake. It was the most deliberate thing I'd done in years. For the first time in nearly a decade, I stopped showing up for someone who had forgotten I was even standing at the door. Derek didn't call that first week. Not the second either. I waited, not because I wanted an apology, but because I wanted to see just how long it would take before they noticed what I'd truly been doing all these years. It wasn't about the money, it was about the silence. The silence I paid for every month just to keep their life running smoothly while mine rusted away in an empty house filled with memories of people who no longer remembered me. The first call came on January 19th, around 3:42 p.m. I let it ring. No voicemail. Just a missed call with his name blinking like it meant something. A few hours later, another call, then one from Leanne. I still didn't answer. Instead, I watched a movie I'd never seen, made myself dinner, and let the storm outside howl louder than their sudden interest in me. The next day, a text from Derek appeared. Hey, Dad. Hope you're okay. Weird thing with the mortgage company. Looks like a payment didn't go through. Can we talk? I didn't reply. I simply turned off my phone and let the silence do what my words never could, speak the truth. A week later, another notice landed at Derek's home, more urgent this time. Late fees stacking. The bank wasn't interested in excuses, only money. And now, without me silently keeping the machine oiled, the gears began grinding hard. I later heard through a friend that Derek had gone back to his old college buddies looking for advice, even tried getting a loan, but his credit wasn't what it used to be. Funny how easy it is to forget responsibility when someone else is carrying it for you. Meanwhile, I was finally remembering what it felt like to breathe. I joined a painting class at the community center, not because I'm any good, but because it felt nice to create something. I met a woman named Susan there, a retired nurse who painted lighthouses and brought cinnamon muffins to share with the class. She had a warmth to her, like someone who knew what heartbreak felt like but didn't let it define her. We started having lunch together after class, just two people who had been forgotten by their families, finding a little comfort in each other's quiet. She asked me once, "Why do you always look like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop?" I told her, "Because I've been holding it up for so long, I forgot how to let go." She smiled, didn't say a word, just passed me another muffin. That moment said more than Derek had in years. By early February, the calls from Derek had turned into frantic voicemails. "Dad, please call me back. I don't know what's going on. We're about to default. This can't be happening." Leanne even left one too, her voice sharp with stress. "Harold, we need to talk. This is serious. Ella needs her home." I sat with that last line for a long time. Ella needs her home. And for a decade, I made sure she had one. But they didn't need me at their table. They didn't need me for Christmas. Now suddenly I was needed again, but not for who I was. Just for what I gave. That was the line I drew. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was awake. Awake to the reality that I'd raised a son who believed love could be measured in monthly deposits. Who confused inheritance with entitlement. Who forgot that behind every mortgage payment was a man eating dinner alone, staring at a framed photo of a family that had stopped calling. Mid-February, a formal letter came for Derek. Final notice. Foreclosure proceedings imminent. That was the day he drove down to my house. I saw his car pull up from the living room window, still the same black SUV I helped him co-sign 5 years ago. He stepped out, shoulders hunched, hands in his pockets, like a boy showing up to the principal's office. He knocked once, twice. I didn't answer. I just sat, let him knock again. Then the doorbell. Then pounding. Finally, I stood and opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept. His hair was a mess, eyes tired, lips pressed in frustration. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" he asked, voice shaky. "I've been trying to call you for weeks." I stood there, calm. "You said you weren't expecting me for Christmas," I replied softly. "So I assumed you wouldn't be expecting my money either." He blinked. "Are you serious? This is about Christmas." "No," I said. "It's about years of being invisible. It's about how I became a paycheck, not a parent. You didn't want me in your life. Just in your wallet." He stepped back like I'd slapped him. "Dad, come on. That's not fair. Isn't it?" I said. "You never even noticed what I gave up for you. My retirement fund is almost gone. I haven't taken a vacation in 15 years. I live like a monk so you can live in a house you don't even want me in." He didn't have a response. Just silence. For the first time, he saw me, not as a bank account, not as a backup plan, but as a man who had been bleeding quietly into their comfort. I didn't invite him in. I didn't need to. He stood there for a few minutes more, then turned and left. I watched his SUV pull away and disappear down the street. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It just felt like closure. That weekend, I had dinner with Susan at her place. We laughed over burned lasagna and watched an old movie on her couch. I told her the whole story, everything from the mortgage to the uninvited. She didn't pity me. She just nodded and said, "Good. You finally chose yourself." And maybe that's what this was all about. Choosing myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't an afterthought. I was a person with boundaries. With limits. And the courage to say no. Derek would have to face the consequences. Maybe he'd sell the house. Maybe the bank would take it. Maybe he'd finally understand what it meant to stand on his own. Whatever happened, I knew one thing: I wasn't going back. I wasn't going to rescue someone who didn't even want me at his table. Because I deserve more than a last-minute invite. I deserve more than being needed only when things fall apart. I deserve peace. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally starting to find it. March arrived like a soft whisper after a brutal winter. The snow had mostly melted, leaving behind wet patches on sidewalks and the scent of thawed earth in the air. In my little house at the edge of town, birds had started to return, chirping through the open windows I hadn't dared crack since December. Life was settling again, not into the same old routine, but into something gentler. Lighter. I'd kept to myself mostly, spending more time at the community center, reading mystery novels, and painting landscapes with Susan. She'd become a sort of compass for me, reminding me, without ever needing to say the words, that healing doesn't always arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it tiptoes in with quiet dinners and silly laughter. I hadn't heard from Derek in nearly a month. Not a text. Not a voicemail. I assumed they had figured something out, sold the house, moved in with Leanne's parents, or finally faced the reality of their independence. Part of me hoped Derek had learned something, not just about finances, but about love, gratitude, and the cost of silence. And then, one gray-skied afternoon in early March, I heard a knock on my front door. Not the quick, confident kind. This one was hesitant. Measured. I opened the door to see Derek and Leanne standing there, both looking like they hadn't slept in days. Derek's eyes were bloodshot, not from anger, but from defeat. Leanne clutched Ella's hand, who stood behind them, quieter than usual. She wasn't wearing her bright pink coat this time, just a hand-me-down jacket that looked a size too small. For a moment, no one said anything. Derek stared at the ground. Leanne's eyes shimmered with something between shame and exhaustion. And sweet Ella looked up at me with a fragile smile, like she wasn't sure if she was still allowed to. "Dad," Derek finally said, voice hoarse, "we lost the house." I didn't flinch. I just stepped aside and nodded once, letting them in. They walked in slowly, as if the floor might collapse beneath them. The same floor they used to tread as guests. This time, they weren't here for a visit. They were here because they had nowhere else to go. I made tea. No one spoke for a while. I let the silence do what it needed to cleanse the room, scrub away all the pretense and pride that had kept us apart for so long. Finally, Derek looked at me, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so damn sorry. I didn't realize. I didn't want to realize how much you were doing for us. I just thought. I thought it would always be there." I nodded slowly, not with resentment, but with understanding. That's the thing about support, Derek. When it's quiet, people forget it's there. Until it's gone. Leanne wiped her eyes. "We were wrong to push you away. To act like you didn't matter. I didn't want their apologies. I wanted honesty. And I was finally getting it." "You didn't just forget Christmas," I said, gently. "You forgot that I'm a person. Not a payment plan." Derek leaned forward. "I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life making that right. But I need you to know we're not here for money. We're here because we finally realized how much we lost before the bank ever sent those letters." That hit me harder than I expected. Not because it was eloquent. But because for once it was true. They weren't looking for a bailout. They were looking for something deeper. Something real. I told them they could stay in the guest room for a few nights while they figured things out. Ella was already curled up on the couch, finally smiling as she played with a puzzle box Susan had given me for Christmas. Later that evening, Derek helped me take out the trash and offered to fix the creaky gate in the backyard. It was the first time in years I saw him take initiative, not for his wife, not for his daughter, but for something bigger than all three of them: accountability. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Slowly, but noticeably. Derek got a job working at a nearby construction firm. Hard work. Long hours. Not glamorous, but honest. Leanne started helping at the community center's children's library. Ella enrolled in the local school and made fast friends. They didn't ask for money. They didn't complain. They simply lived, and did their part. I watched Derek grow into the kind of man I'd always hoped he'd become. Not perfect. Not rich. But grounded. Humble. Present. And I finally allowed myself to be loved without having to earn it through sacrifice. One evening, Susan came over for dinner, her first time meeting the whole family. Leanne set the table, Derek cooked, and Ella decorated the napkins with little hand-drawn hearts. As we sat together, laughing, eating, just existing in the same space, I realized something powerful. I didn't need to be the provider anymore. I just needed to be Dad. A few weeks later, Derek and I took a walk through town. We passed by a small, cozy brick house on Maple Avenue, the same one that had a "for sale" sign since early January. Derek paused. "You know," he said, "if we ever save up enough, this place feels like home." I smiled. "It does." "In fact," I added, reaching into my coat pocket, "I already thought of that." I handed him an envelope. Inside were the closing documents. That house, paid for, in my name, had been a quiet plan I made after Christmas. Not as a reward. Not as a handout. But as a safety net I hoped they'd never need. "It's not a gift," I said, before he could protest. "It's a fresh start. But this time, you carry the keys. Not me." Derek hugged me. Tighter than ever. No words. Just a son holding a father, not for support, but for gratitude. They moved in 2 weeks later. Paid me rent every month, on time. Not because I needed the money, but because they needed the practice. That spring, I finally took a vacation to the coast with Susan. We walked the beach at sunrise, listened to the waves, and talked about everything except the past. Because the past didn't define me anymore. I wasn't the man who paid for a family that never called. I was the man who stopped, stood still, and waited for love to catch up, and it did. Months later, Ella sent me a handwritten card. Thank you for giving us a home again, Grandpa. But more than that, thank you for helping Daddy become one too. And that was worth more than 1,000 mortgage payments. You see, when I canceled that payment, I thought I was cutting them off. But really, I was cutting myself free. And in doing so, I gave us all a chance to rebuild, on firmer ground. No longer a house bought with sacrifice, but a home built with truth.